feature presentation.
Welcome back to another Untitled movie review. I'm one of your hosts, Matt Rohrbeck. Alongside, he's allergic to tomatoes, but he is tomato meter approved, Eric Marchin.
The dogs are barking, so that means we have one hell of a movie to review. A big old woof, I would assume.
I like that. I like that. Yes, today we are reviewing Rawson Marshall Thurber's Red Notice, starring Dwayne Johnson, Ryan Reynolds, Gal Gadot, and more. Netflix's woof 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 indeed. I agree with your dogs. Another Netflix stab at trying a big budget franchise, or at least really forcing that. And just really relying on star power and star power alone. And it is, God, I tweeted this, and we can just get right into it, Eric. We just went to Los Angeles. Everyone can check out episode 106 of the Entitled Movie Podcast if they want to hear about our quick jaunt over to LA. And we did go to a Netflix event. So we apologize for this review.
No, we don't, because I think Netflix does some good stuff in terms of supporting, a tour filmmakers. But when it comes to, as the dogs continue to bark, because I think there's a package. But when it comes to their, as you mentioned, their potential franchises, their blockbuster movies, they still haven't figured that out yet. And it's like, throw as much money at a production as possible, cast superstars in the roles, but other than that, there's no story, there's no script that is really worth the time and effort. And especially with something like this, where you have a filmmaker who has worked with The Rock before on both Central Intelligence and Skyscraper.
Has Plane trilogy, baby.
The trilogy of mediocrity is just. It's so weird watching this film, because reportedly this movie costs over $200 million to make, and probably a lot of it goes to the salaries of the three leads, because none of it went to the special effects.
At least half of that, I would say,
or
probably
post-production
salary. Yeah, because it weirdly looks cheap at times.
Oh yeah,
like the green screen is awful.
There's a sequence that takes place in Argentina in a bullfight, and the bull looks so badly
the
CGI.
worst CG bull I've ever seen, dude.
But also, and it's maybe not just this movie as well, like even something like No Time to Die has a couple of moments. CGI skylines are really, really noticeable. Like, I'm starting to get fed up with those, where it's like,
we noticed it a lot into what was that comedy we watched? Was it also Netflix?
Oh, Vacation Friends.
Yeah, Vacation Friends. But Disney, sorry, it was on Star here. But yeah, there were some horizon shots where it's just awful on a cliff.
Well, you get a wrestler in a lead role, you have to have terrible CGI skylines.
Yeah, it's shockingly cheap looking at time for a movie that cost $200 million. And I think maybe because it's shot, multiple, it jumps across the globe, and it's supposed to be this, huge kind of not spy thriller.
Well, it's a heist film, but also it's an action adventure. You mentioned globe-trotting kind of journey. It kind of mirrors things like the Thomas Crown Affair and The Fugitive and Indiana Jones, and it's obviously referencing those things, and it kind of thinks it's smart enough to reference those things before you think about them. Even this joke with Pulp Fiction, where Ryan Reynolds' character, who he plays this sort of art thief who's considered the most wanted art thief by Interpol, has a father who was obsessed with finding the missing egg that Cleopatra was given to her by Antony, one of three. The other two, one is in a museum and the other one is owned in a private collection. But the third one has been missing forever, and you've had treasure hunters looking for it, and one of which was this father who was neglectful to Ryan Reynolds. And there's this joke where, like, you're thinking about it too, where he finds this watch, and this watch basically is sort of a step in the direction to find the location. And he says, oh, it's like the Pulp Fiction watch, and you're just like, movie, come on. You think you're as smart as the Bishop character in this film. You're always one move ahead of the audience, but you're not. Like, especially if you've seen every other movie that this is referencing. But the main storyline here is that you have The Rock, who's playing an FBI profiler, and again, like, there's a joke where it's like, oh, you don't look like an FBI profiler. Yeah, we get it. Okay, like, he's a big hulking man who probably has never spent any time in an office. And he's on the trail of Ryan Reynolds' art thief. And as the story begins, we see him in a museum in Italy, and basically Reynolds' character has already taken the egg, and it becomes kind of a chase movie. But then also you find out that Gal Gadot's criminal is also kind of intertwined in the storyline, and that she's even more cagey than Ryan Reynolds' character, and she's known as the Bishop. And sort of it's basically the odd couple being paired together with Reynolds and Dwayne Johnson sort of having to work together in order to clear Johnson's name, because he's been framed as being in collaboration with Reynolds' character, and Reynolds wanted to get his top spot back as the most wanted criminal when it comes to thieving precious pieces of art. And throughout this film, as you mentioned, there's a lot of sort of moving from Spain to the Amazon to Italy and all over the globe. There's a lot of really bad jokes and humor. The action is very choppy with the editing. It's a very slick looking production. An arms dealer owns the second egg, and the whole time I kept thinking he looks a lot like Paul Rudd, and it was distractingly
Who did I think he looked
taking
like?
me out of the
I
film.
thought he looked like oh my god, I'll get it in a second. I'm blanking.
But yeah, the whole time you're watching this movie and you're thinking to yourself, wow, they spent $200 million on this. And like, even though we didn't love the old guard, I can understand why.
I thought he looked like Damian Bashir.
He does a little bit, but I think he kind of has like that Paul Rudd.
It's Chris Diamantopoulos, right?
Yeah, he's probably best known as one of the. He was in the Farrelly
Toronto.
Brothers. Yeah, he was he was in the Farrelly Brothers adaptation of the Three Stooges. He was on 24 for a little bit. Your basic character actor. But yeah, this movie is one of those films where it's not an awful movie, but it is forgettable, and you had already seen it before.
Which is the Rawson Marshall Thurber like auteur.
Yeah, you
theory.
mentioned the plane film, but you also mentioned something that I think you should also talk about, which I wouldn't have caught or didn't know because I'm not an alcohol guy, but Ryan Reynolds, the shameless self-promotion.
No, The Rock.
No, Ryan Reynolds does too.
Does he also?
Because Ryan Reynolds, when he goes to
because The Rock has, anyways, my thoughts on the movie, I'll get into that part, Eric. Everyone, if you're a listener of either reviews or our podcast, you probably know my thoughts on Ryan Reynolds. I'm tough on the guy just because I do think he is a genuinely good dude, and I like his personality in real life, but I feel like he is so one-dimensional, it is frustrating. And like, I like him in something like Buried, and you brought up Adventureland when we were talking about this, where he can kind of show that he has a little bit more than this one character he plays.
The wisecracking, self-aware,
sarcastic
smugness.
Yeah. And he does it in every movie, no matter if he's playing a bad guy in Red Notice, a superhero like Deadpool, or just a good guy, a rom-com, anything. He is the exact same fucking person.
He's a modern day Chevy Chase in a lot of ways.
Yes, and he's been doing it since the sitcom he was on, the Pizza Place show.
Two guys, a girl, and a pizza place, and then it was just called Two Guys and a Girl because then they
blew my mind because
it.
I never watched that show, and I remember going, "Oh man, Ryan Reynolds has played the same character in basically every movie." And then
Ryans kind of started with kind of like that sitcom-y era.
Sure.
Like you had Ryan Gosling, who was also in Young Hercules. Yes, we know that. But for Canadians, you know, he did a lot of TV stuff with both Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark, but also was known for Breaker High.
Breaker High, yeah, man. So Reynolds, I went back and watched some of that. And I'm like, oh my God, he's been doing this since, this is just his thing. He's just been typecasted in the same thing, or not even typecasted, but it's just what he can do.
Well, he's also on an episode of the X-Files, because the X-Files shot in Vancouver.
Play the same character?
Yes, yeah, basically, yeah.
So everyone knows my thoughts on him, and guess what? You're getting that exact same character here. I'm like, okay,
but to be fair, so are The Rock and Gal Gadot.
I do like Gal Gadot playing a kind of cartoony villain. I don't love it, but I'm kind of, it's Wonder Woman,
it's against
just like
type
a little bit. She's still Gal Gadot, but like I do kind of like her as a mustache twirling hacker bishop, I'm one step ahead of you villain kind of thing.
Right.
I don't mind that. The Rock also kind of falls in that kind of category of being a little bit one-dimensional.
But I kind of like his one note.
Yes. And I'm like, The Rock can make, an enjoyable, action movie. And like, this falls in that category where it's like neither here nor there. And that's why I kind of said the Rawson Marshall Thurber like plane trilogy, because I think Red Notice, Skyscraper, and Central Intelligence, I can't say like any of those movies are horrible. And if you watched all three of those movies, they're perfect plane movies. Like I feel like they are movies that aren't very good, aren't horrible, but if you're on a flight over 2 hours, like if that popped up and it was fairly new or you hadn't seen it, you're not going to have a horrible time. You're just going to watch it. It's going to kill time on your flight.
It's the perfect time waster.
And then you're going to be done with it and you're going to go, oh, okay. And then just like, you're not going to say anything. You're just going to go, okay. And then move on. And that's kind of what Red Notice is, where like, other than we mentioned some of the, it weirdly looking cheap at times with the green screen and the special effects and stuff.
And part of that might be Netflix as well, where,
they're still trying to
have
figure
certain
out, like,
cameras and an aesthetic that they're working with. So, and to your point, like the whole time when I was watching this movie, like another thing
just goes through the motions.
Rawson Marshall Thurber is that I was getting his movies confused with Brad Payton, who's also worked with The Rock, but
The
only
Rock
twice.
Latches onto a couple of guys,
but a lot of actors do that.
Yame Colette Sarah is more interesting, right? Where I'm like, okay, Jungle Cruise. Say what you want about Jungle Cruise, but at least The Rock going, oh, I like working with this guy as well. I mean, The Rock is always probably going to be The Rock show too, like not in a sense where he's controlling, but he is going to be the biggest presence, right? Like,
it's even hard to like, even if he's working with a quote unquote auteur filmmaker or somebody that maybe is outside of his comfort zone. Like he's just such a personality. But going back to the Brad Payton thing, I always thought that Rawson Marshall Thurber also directed like Rampage and San Andreas, but that was Brad Payton. But they're all in that category of the plane movie, right?
No,
where
they're
like
all plane movies.
You miss it in theaters, but you see it on pay-per-view.
And I don't mean that as an insult, because I do genuinely like The Rock, but he's got the plane movie down perfectly.
The formula is there,
and he nails the plane movie. And like this is that where it's like, all right, it's globetrotting. It's got a lot of tropes from those types of movies you mentioned that are familiar, but it's kind of comforting. It's just a popcorn movie, and that's ultimately what they're trying to make here. And I guess they sort of succeed in that. They're not aiming to be anything more than that. I don't.
But it's kind of soulless too,
but then,
right?
Yes, absolutely. And I think even trying to make it into a franchise and stuff is just. I think Netflix is just so desperate for one of these things to catch on, for it to go, oh, we can make 4 movies from this because it has big names and stuff like that. But it just feels kind of like they haven't found that thing yet, and they're just trying so hard in every movie to be like, this could be a franchise, and everyone's like, is it? I don't know.
They're just throwing money at everything.
It's fine, but like we don't need another one of these. And then so anyways, it kind of goes through, and everyone's, again, Gal Gadot is the only one that I think is kind of interesting because she's the villain of the movie. The Rock and
also singing Downtown Reynolds in this as well, which I thought was funny because of is it down tempo? It kind of is, because she has to go down tempo. But another thing that you did bring up as well when we were talking,
you want to go back to the tequila and the gin, or no?
We will in a second.
Yeah.
But another thing that you brought up that I think is important is that The Rock is sexless when it comes to chemistry with his leading ladies.
And that's been a problem in everything that he's done.
And again, that kind of goes to the action
He's a sexy
movies.
man, but like...
Oh, he's a good looking guy, but at the same time, like, you look at Vin Diesel, you look at Tom Cruise, you look at The Rock, these guys have no chemistry with their leading ladies. And we saw this even with Jungle Cruise with Emily Blunt, but we also saw it with Vanessa Kirby. You know, like, The Rock, his greatest sort of you know, basically leading lady is himself. Like, he's better by himself or just kind of with the camera. Like, the camera is his best sort of, like, you know, plus one.
Yeah, in WWE it was always like, you know, The Rock talking to the camera, and he has so much charisma, right? That like, but it's weird that charisma doesn't translate to, you know, he is rather sexless in every movie that I've ever seen him in. There's no, you know, relationship he's ever had in a movie. And I'm not saying that and sometimes it's because a movie it's forced upon him, or it doesn't necessarily need that. And it's just like, well, here's kind of the thing that, you know, we have to put this in this movie because that's just, you know, what these movies have. Yeah. And I'm like, do you need it though? Like, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And I feel like you can kind of break that mold and do something, especially if it just, you're noticing that, you know, The Rock, that just doesn't work for him. And maybe you're waiting for the right, you know, leading, you know, woman across from him. But like, if you look at anything he's done, and when they try to force a relationship on him, I just never find that it works that well. But yeah, I totally agree that, I mean, we're kind of tiptoeing around here, but yeah, it doesn't work in this movie. And then, so going back to something that, you know, I'm one to always sort of not defend product placement, but it doesn't really bother me. Like, I'd prefer a movie to have real products in it rather than a can that just says cola or something like that. Like,
well, there is a can of Coke in this movie that they pour on one of the eggs, right?
Yeah. So I'd rather have a actual can of Coke or a Pepsi. And if someone pays for that product placement, as long as it's not egregious, it's not Transformers, Bud Light truck in the background spilling everywhere, like egregiously.
But you kind of expect that with a movie,
yeah, sure,
from Michael Bay, right?
Absolutely. But or if I was watching I forget what TV show it was once, but they're like, oh yeah, good thing that he used a Chevrolet Camaro because they have the new Chevrolet My app, and they're like on the
that's like
app,
a Wayne's
like,
World moment.
It's like that stuff is almost comical, but then you get stuff like in this movie where it's just kind of cringy and lame, where The Rock at one moment is sitting at a bar, and it's not like it snap zooms to it or even like lingers on the bottle that much, but The Rock is drinking Terramana tequila, which is The Rock's tequila. And then that you can't overthink, because you're like, wait, does The Rock exist in this universe? Because his tequila does, or does someone else own that tequila brand in this universe? And
it's
I'm like,
Dan Aykroyd's.
And it's also just lame that The Rock's like, I gotta be drinking Terramana tequila in this movie because that's my tequila. And I'm just like, bro, that's so lame. And then I didn't notice, but does Ryan Reynolds drink aviation gin in the movie too?
So in the scene where The Rock apprehends Ryan Reynolds at his lair, and he's arrested by Interpol, he's pouring himself a drink, and then in the background, when he's having the conversation with the Interpol agent Dawes and The Rock, the bottle
of
there.
Aviation gin is an aviation gin. That's the worst, dude. I didn't even notice that one. But like, that shit is just that's just so lame to me. Like, I get it, like it's produced by $7, which is The Rock's production company,
and it's also
like,
this kind of movie, right?
It is, but that's the shit that I just like. It doesn't necessarily, not like a very small amount of people are even going to like recognize that. It's just because we're giant dorks, and like
but I wanted them to almost be drinking, like I mentioned, Dan Aykroyd, like the Crystal Skull vodka. Like, that would be funny.
That vodka sucks, dude.
No, it sucks, but the actual packaging of it is hilarious.
But then that's satirical in the sense of being like poking fun at celebrity alcohol endorsement things, not even endorsements, just brands that they own. But that shit is just like, I remember like Steven Seagal or not Steven Seagal's, Sylvester Stallone drinking bullet bourbon in like The Expendables, or a movie that he did. And I don't think
was
he
it
even
was it
owns
The
Bullet.
Expendables, or
No,
was it Bullet to the Head?
Bullet to the Head.
I
That's
actually, but
right.
I like that. Like, I don't like that movie, but I like that scene because when in that movie he goes into the bar and he asks if they have that drink, and the guy says no, and he says, "Well, I have it on me. Can I drink it?" And he says no, but then he says, "Well, what if I pay for the glass?" And I kind of like that. It's like you bring your own.
And the movie's called Bullet
beer.
to the Head, and he's drinking bullet bourbon. Come on. So
yeah,
I'm
Walter
fine
Hill
with that.
movies. Yeah,
and,
you're gonna.
And I don't know if I don't think Stallone owns bullet bourbon, but like at least that's kind of playing it up. And they don't even play it up in here, which I'd almost prefer if they did.
Instead of making it like a subtle wink, or like just
not even a wink, but
there.
like I'm gonna be like, oh well, The Rock's cool. What tequilas he's drinking? Oh wow, should I drink? Oh wait, The Rock owns that tequila. Of course he does.
It would have been funnier if he was like basically trolling Vin Diesel and drinking Corona or something like that.
There is a Vin Diesel joke in the movie, which references cats. Which I don't know if it references something that's real, but if that is real, I need to see it. Because even the way Ryan Reynolds is like, it's real, it exists, and I'm like, that almost seems like a meta joke where that might actually exist, and I fucking hope it's true, and I want to find it.
It's more interesting, I think, to talk about Vin Diesel and The Rock's beef, and whether or not Vin Diesel's olive branch via Instagram is gonna work.
We talked about that so much when we were on our trip, where we stopped talking about Red Notice. I'm gonna give it did I give it a 2.5? It's almost passable to me, because it's like a plane movie where I'm like, if I watched this on an airplane, I wouldn't be mad, but I did watch it at home, and I was like, and there's a twist ending that I'm like, admittedly got me, but like not in a good way, but like I'm just like, oh,
it's a horrible twist. Okay. And then when they do the recap thing where like they show you
saw
like... I'm gonna give it a 2. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is that it is interesting that you have 3 actors who have now been in the Fast saga, and that like I wanted to really like the Russian prison escape sequence. Like I think that there was something there, and there's also going back to Ryan
Shaw though.
Yeah, but going back to Ryan Reynolds' character, it's fascinating to watch him because it's like the character is so inconsistent in terms of, okay, at some points he's capable and he's hard and elusive to get sort of,
and sometimes he's a moron,
and it's all depending on what The Rock needs in any given scene, and it's all dictated by The Rock, where like, okay, some scenes you're gonna need The Rock to be like in this cat and mouse kind of chase with him, and then in certain scenes he's basically the comedic relief in terms of them talking about their fathers and stuff like that, and then there are times where it almost seems like he's completely incapable of doing all the things that he's been basically sort of you've been told that he's capable of. It's like, it's just so bizarre in terms of his modulation of his character.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. If you're on an airplane in the next, whenever.
Is Netflix on airplanes? Do they have that specifically for?
But you could put it on your phone,
right?
And then, or your iPad.
The way it was meant to be seen, a $200 million
absolutely
movie on your phone.
But ironically, that is the right way to watch this movie. Like, I would say, throw it on your phone and maybe watch it on an airplane. There are better movies you could watch, but then I wouldn't suggest you to watch a better movie on an airplane. An airplane movie should be an airplane movie because, again, you have to watch it on your phone or the seat in front of you or something like that. Like,
and you're still getting the sound of the cabin coming through. And
these headphones that I got are great, dude. On that trip, like the noise canceling on that plane was fantastic. I couldn't sleep at all, but at least when I was like listening to podcasts or watching stuff, it actually
you were comfortable
and out
in tune.
But I don't suggest everyone buy them because they're way too expensive.
You don't want to add some shameless product placement into this as well.
Apple doesn't need more of that, even though I'm surrounded by Apple products. Even what's shooting this right now is an Apple product. Anyways, thanks everyone. I forget what we were going to talk about. Oh, Vin Diesel. Let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah, let's do it
before we wrap up. It's not like we have 800 other things we got to record today, but that was funny on our trip. Like right as Red Notice, I think on the day Red Notice came out, at least in theaters, because it's now playing on Netflix. If you guys just want to check it out at home, which is probably what you want to do. But it was playing in theaters for a little while, at least for that first week. The Paradise here in Toronto, which was random and funny.
But it was playing at Landmark, and it still is playing at Landmark cinemas in Whitby, at least.
What a world where Netflix movies are just seeing Netflix trailers on the big screen before other movies and stuff is just weird, especially in big multiplexes in
well, also given like Cineplex's stance
they've changed that
before the pandemic, like, right?
Yeah. But Vin did this. Vin Diesel's Instagram, just the best. If you're not following Vin Diesel on Instagram, and even if you don't care about Fast and the Furious and stuff, it is a treasure trove. He extended this olive branch that Eric mentioned, where he's just like, my brother Dwayne, you gotta come back. And it was my baby brother, my little brother, or whatever he said. And it's just this long post about wanting The Rock to come back to the Fast franchise. And that could go one of two ways. Cause like I get the thinking of being like, okay, I'll be the one that says, let's put this behind us and let's move forward. You need to come back.
I'll be the bigger man, even though Hobbs. I'm smaller.
And then the image he used was like Photoshop to make him look as big as The Rock, but he's not. And then I was like, The Rock could take that of two ways. Cause I could see The Rock also being like, you fucker, you could have just like talked to me in private. Now you're putting it out there in public, where now it's the pressure's on sort of me because you're the one who's coming across as the guys who is extending that olive branch. And if I say no, I look like the asshole, but you're the one who put this out there in public. So maybe The Rock doubles down on being mad at him and being like, you fucking dickhead. Like I'm not doing that. I ultimately think The Rock is a company man, and he probably, he understands the importance of him probably coming back for that last movie, and he probably will.
He's not forgiving. It's a financial decision.
Yeah, not even financial, but just
it's good business though. But that's
for him,
like those movies make a lot of money, and he became like Vin Diesel was threatened not only physically by The Rock, but also by the the presence of him coming into the franchise and basically stealing some of the thunder pants of Vin Diesel in those movies.
Yeah. So I ultimately do think he'll probably come back for it, but we shall see. Anyways, Red Notice now available if you guys want to check it out. Thank you all for listening or watching. We have a lot of other content that you guys can check out right now. We did mention we went to LA, so you can check out episode 106 of the Untitled Movie Podcast, where Eric and I talk about that trip to LA. It was a whirlwind 24 hours, so we'll go into detail of that, just kind of shoot the shit about what else is going on in the industry. You can also check out our newest Untitled Movie Conversation about Disney Plus Day, where we talk about all the announcements, a lot of the Marvel stuff, MCU stuff, a bunch of other things that they announced during Disney Plus Day, how that whole event went out. And then in honor of Disney Plus Day, we also reviewed Home Sweet Home Alone. Happy holidays, everyone. Go check that out. We do also have a Ghostbusters Afterlife review you guys can check out as well. Spoiler free. And then we will have a conversation going out, like a spoiler cast for Ghostbusters, because Eric and I have very different opinions on that movie. And I think it'll be tough to dance around a lot of things in the spoiler-free version. So we'll give you kind of our top-level thoughts on the spoiler-free version of if we liked or did not like it. And then we really wanted to do a spoiler cast so we can kind of go into more detail of why we liked it or didn't like it.
Which will be in our conversation section, and that'll be coming out after the first weekend.
Yeah, I might put it out on the day of the release. We'll find that out, but it will come out after the movie is in theaters, so everyone has a chance to at least go see it.
We'll also make sure to indicate that it is a spoiler conversation.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So thank you all for listening. To find us, Untitled Movie Podcast on YouTube and all podcast services, Untitled Movie Reviews. Easiest spot to find all of our stuff, just go to our Letterboxd, which is Untitled_cast. All of our links are there. All of our reviews are there. Everything's over there. So thank you. As always, my name is Matt Rohrbeck. You can find more of my work around the internet, but mostly at UntitledMoviePodcast.com. And you can follow me on all the social medias at Matt Rohrbeck.
And I'm Eric Marchin. You can find more of my video reviews at RogersTV.com/CinemaScene and on the social medias at EM6211.
Until next time.
I really would love to see an audition tape of Vin Diesel playing or auditioning for McCavity.
I want that so bad.